guys, it's KM. Welcome to my YouTube channel and my very first bullet journal video. I did film the first part of this video outside, which is why you can see the lighting changing so much. But don't worry, it only lasts for the first minute and I then film the rest of the video inside. I hope you enjoy, so without further ado, let's get to the video. The theme of this month's plan with me is autumnal foxes, perfect for September. I will be drawing foxes in various poses as well as natural elements like fallen leaves and mushrooms. So you can see here I'm beginning with my design pre-drawn in pencil. This is to give me a guideline when working in ink. I'm using a Uniball eye pen here with a 0.7mm tip, and I'm drawing quite liberally and loosely to create a more illustrative feel. Now I did lose some footage here, but all I did was begin adding watercolour by applying a grey base wash over some areas of the design to give it a greater sense of depth. To create the fox's fur, I'm layering different shades of orange and brown in light flicking motions. It's important to work like this rather than applying solid areas of colour to create texture in what you're painting. I'm then going to go ahead and add colour to the foliage. I'm choosing to work in a main palette of reds, yellows and browns to reflect the autumn theme, while adding in some bright green onto the ferns for a much needed splash of contrast. I'm then going ahead to write out September for my title. Now I'm not doing this in any particular font, just a more cursive, fancy version of my normal handwriting. I'm then going back over this in a thick black felt pen, thickening the vertical sections of the letters to create a calligraphy look. At this point, I did start to get rained on sitting outside, so we're going to move inside for the rest of the video. So for this page, I'm creating a goals section as well as adding in the first 3 days of September. As these days fall Friday to Sunday, they don't fit into a weekly plan, so I'm just going to put them here. For my goals section, I'm creating a circular design again, using all the mushrooms, leaves and berries to make a wreath. When drawing, I really do recommend that you work from a real life reference. I'm drawing from photographs of mushrooms, ferns and all these other things, and that allows my drawing to be much more accurate and ultimately more realistic. I'm also adding these two large ferns to the side to break up the circular shape to make it look more interesting. So here I'm just drawing out the sections I would like for my first 3 days of September. I'm adding in these little triangles in the top corner to make it look like they're little notes that have been folded over. I'm then just drawing out a section here to write in my goals. After that, I'm going over sections of my drawing in a thick black felt tip. This is actually a bingo marker that I bought from Rymans, but any felt tip will do the trick. I'm doing this to thicken up any areas I feel need to look more bold and to give them more impact. Once I've done that, I've added in colour to the foliage once again. Then what I'm doing here is to simply use a paintbrush with nothing but water on to bleed the ink from the felt tip to create a quick background. This is a great way to add washes of colour if you don't own any watercolours. As a general rule, the cheaper the felt tip, the better it will bleed. Now I'm just going to go ahead and write in my goals for the month ahead. I'm then adding in dates for my little daily plans, thickening the vertical sections again to create an illustrative look. And that's it for this page, so now we're going to move on to my monthly trackers. Here I'm drawing out all the lines for my habit tracker. I've pre-drawn the lines out in pencil to make sure that they're accurate. Those longer lines are 19.5cm long and 1cm apart, and those shorter connecting lines are 0.5 centimetre apart. I'm then going over the outline and the area I will use for my headings in black felt pen, so I can bleed the ink out to make a background later. Here I'm simply adding in some more decorative detail with my Uniball eye once again. My habit tracker is one of my favourite parts of keeping a bullet journal, as it helps me see areas of my life that are lacking and where I need to focus more attention. In conjunction with my mood tracker, I think it is a really helpful way to see what habits regularly affect how I'm feeling. Once I've done that, I'm able to go ahead and write out my headings for the habits I would like to track, as well as the dates. Again, I'm simply working in my own handwriting and thickening the vertical sections of the letters. Like we did with the page before, I'm using water and a paintbrush to spread the ink from the felt tip to create a background. I'm also using this technique on my plants to give them a sense of depth before we add colour later. I'm then going to go ahead and add splashes of colour to each of my headings, using my palette of reds and oranges. Although here it looks as though the watercolour is still covering up my writing, it will show through clearly once the paint has dried. Because I drew my lines earlier in the Uniball eye pen, these lines won't run and will remain clean for the whole time. For those of you wondering, the watercolour palette I'm using is the Windsor Newton palette. I will admit it is on the pricier side of palettes out there, but it is more than worth it, as the pigment is so saturated it lasts a very, very long time. We are now going ahead to my mood tracker. I've decided just to begin drawing straight in felt tip here. Essentially what I'm doing is drawing a calendar view. The larger squares are 2 cm by 2 cm and the smaller ones are 1 cm by 2 cm. I'm going to be calling my mood tracker my brain weather, and my key will be various weather icons to represent the general emotion that I've been feeling that day. If I'm having the best day, I will represent this with a rainbow. If it's a good day, a happy sun. If it's a day which is just okay or just fine, I'll use a little sun peeking out from behind a cloud. And if I'm sad, I'll use this rain cloud. Again, if I'm anxious, it will be a storm cloud because of all that static pressure, and a black cloud if it's an angry or irritable day. As I have all this blank space at the bottom of my page, it's the perfect chance to draw another fox. I'm going to draw this one curled up sleeping amongst some plants. Here I'm adding in some mushrooms sprouting up around a tree trunk as well as some tall ferns. To begin adding colour, I am first going to wash the felt tip in areas I wish to create shadows. The pen will dry with a grey-blue tone, which is great for creating shadows. I'm also going to apply this to my tracking area. I'm then going to go ahead and add pops of colour to the area I will write my dates in. I'm applying mainly reds and oranges with 1 or 2 bright yellows and greens for contrast. I'm then moving on to paint my fox and plants. The best advice I can give when trying to paint fur is to paint your brushstrokes in the direction the fur would naturally go. As a general rule, this means working from the centre of the body outwards. The good thing about using plants in your bullet journal or in your illustrations or whatever art form it is that you practice, is that it's usually a quick and easy way to fill up space. Also, just by adding in a different plant here and there, you'll have endless combinations to work with. You can see that the water has faded and blurred some of my lines, so I'm just going back over them with my Uniball to tidy the whole thing up. After I've done that, I'm going to add in my numbers for my dates and my mood tracker is done. Now that we've done the trackers, we're going to create my expenses page. This is a really quick and simple page, but helps me immensely in controlling what I'm spending. The 6 vertical sections going left to right are for the date, the shop, the item, money in, money out, and the total balance. My table is split into 2 sections for 2 different bank accounts. For the aesthetic side of things, once again I'm using the ink and water technique to create a background. I'm then adding splashes of colour using my watercolour palette to the area I will write my headings, and adding colour to my plants. Lastly, I'm neatening up the grid lines with my felt tip. I will add my headings in later when the paint dries. Moving on, this next page will contain my social media tracker, and the rest will be left blank to use as a space for project notes. I'm also going to add in a little illustration of a fox here at the bottom whilst that dries. I like to take the opportunity to draw in my bullet journal as much as possible, for although I'm a design student at university, I don't really get the chance to make work just for me and not for an academic reason. This is why a lot of people choose to make their bullet journals creative rather than just for productivity, as it's often the only chance they have to be creative outside of work or school. Now that the ink has dried, I'm going ahead to draw in my social media icons. All of these links will be available in the description, and I do post content that you won't see here on YouTube, such as completed weekly plans and trackers, as well as opportunities to get involved with FAQs and content request videos. I'm finishing off this page with a few more plants, and then we're heading over to our last planner spread, which will be the weekly planner. For my weekly September setup, each day will be divided into 3 sections. The first will be for events, the second for to-dos, and the last for gratitudes. I'm beginning with outlining my title and date and the little fox face illustration. I'm then going back over my fox in pen once again using light flicking motions to create the fur texture. You can see that I do make a mistake here by filling in the eyes too much, so I'm filling this in with a white paint marker to correct it. I'm then going back over everything in felt pen, thickening the vertical sections of my lines to give the impression that it has been drawn with a calligraphy pen. At this point, the page still felt too bare to me, so I added in rows of winter berries to add some detail. With these berries, I found the key is to draw a little cross in their centre to make them look more realistic. I'm then using a wide brush with water to spread the ink from the felt pen to give me a background. I'd recommend that if you want to do this, you test it in the back pages of your journal first, as not all paper is thick enough to prevent it from bleeding through your other pages. For the record, I'm using the Moleskine art series, which is originally intended as a sketchbook, and this holds wet media very well without any leakage. I'm then adding in colour to the top left-hand sections of my sections. I'm not adding these colours in any particular order, other than making sure that there's more red and orange to any other colour. For the final touch, as the layout still seemed too plain, I added leaves along the edges of my sections. Once again, this was done at random, which I think gives the whole thing an illustrative and storybook feel. Lastly, I'm adding numbers for my dates and a heading to show me what each section is for. That's then the final touch for this layout, and now we can flip back through each page for a final look. Right back at the start, we have our beautiful title page and goals section. We then have our trackers page with a habit tracker and mood tracker right here. This is the month's expenses page and social media tracker with a space for this month's projects. And last but not least, we have our weekly spread for events, to-dos and gratitudes. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel below for more creative journal inspiration. I will be posting videos every week. Until then, thanks for watching.